Good afternoon. Happy post-election day. I'm Mary Grace. This is Real Talk with Mary Grace. It's the 3rd of November, 2021, and I'm coming to you live from the studio here in Virginia. Welcome, everybody. Let me know you're here. Say hello in the chat. This is live, and if you're on Facebook, tag your friends. Share this in groups to beat the algorithm. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and share this as well. You can send it in a text, send it in a private message, whatever you need to do, just get the word out. And I'm going to talk about a few things today. We're going to talk, of course, about the elections that took place not only in Virginia, but in different parts of the country last night or yesterday, and that were called last night. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the Trump effect and the last year, because today is also the 1-year anniversary of when they stole the presidential election. So we'll talk about that. And apparently that's not acceptable to say that. Apparently you're an insurrectionist if you believe that. But anyway, we'll get to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about captivity and freedom and victory. So stick around for that. And thank you to everybody who's here. It's good to see some of you in the chat. Thank you to my moderators. If you are on CloutHub, I'm on channel 111. And so you can follow that channel. You can follow me on CloutHub, and then you can follow the channel. I think that's the way you do it. And so as always, I have somebody who takes notes during the show, and then I upload those notes to the show notes on YouTube and CloutHub, and then I upload them to a comment on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you're watching a show, you need to look in the comment section for the notes from that show. That's important. I don't put them in the show notes on the Facebook, partly because of the algorithm, especially if we have links to other things, it suppresses the reach. So that's the reason we do that. Okay. So for those of you who are asking, some of you are asking, where do I find the notes on Facebook? You have to go through the comments and look at the comments on your Facebook feed. I think sometimes you can choose which comments you see under a thread. And so you might have it set to newest comments or all comments or top comments or something like that. So you have to look for that when you're on Facebook, and you might have to click it to newest comments or whatever. Just click around with it until you can actually see what you want to see. They don't make it easy. It's one other way that they just suppress information, is that they hide the comments. So now somebody on Facebook is telling me that Facebook won't let them like this. I don't know what that's about. It could be your app. It could be your browser. It could be just Facebook being ridiculous. Okay. But in any case, thank you for trying. On Facebook, though, when you like a show, that's great. It's even better if you go and follow the channel. So Mary Grace Media, go and like and follow Mary Grace Media on Facebook, and then share the whole thing and invite your friends to like and follow the channel. You can do that. Now, let me get on to the content. For today. We're in celebration mode because we had a pivotal election in Virginia yesterday. Many actually pivotal elections, and there are many things that happened around the country, and I'm not going to go into detail about every single one of those. I do want to acknowledge, though, to those of you who are in states and cities and localities where you managed to flip seats from blue to red, especially places that have been Democrat strongholds for a long time. That's a big win, and I want to acknowledge that. And I'll touch on that a little bit later, but I do want to get to what happened here in Virginia. So this is very exciting. In Virginia, as you know, we had a candidate, Glenn Youngkin, who was endorsed by President Trump early on. And so he was endorsed by President Trump early on. And then we also had a candidate for Attorney General, Winsome Sears, who is a Black woman who immigrated from Jamaica at the age of 6 and came up through poverty and joined the Marines and, is living the American dream. She was not a victim of critical race theory, so nobody told her that she couldn't achieve anything because of the white people around her oppressing her. She never got that message. And so she actually managed to achieve the American dream. So that's awesome. And we have Jason Miyares, who is the Hispanic Latin American Attorney General, who won Attorney General. Did I say something different about Winsome Sears? Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. So now there's more that happened in Virginia, and that is that the Republicans took back the House of Delegates. They took back the House of Delegates, which is like the House of Representatives in Virginia. It's called the House of Delegates. So that's critical. That's a key win that's not really being talked about, that we flipped that back to red. Now, the thing is, I want to tell you something about the turnout in Virginia. This is coming from Seth Keshel. Let me see if I have it. Oh, of course, it's not in my notes. Let me just go to Telegram. Let's see. Seth Keshel, where is he? Telegram is good in some ways, but it's incredibly confusing, especially when you're searching for something. And I think I told you guys, don't private message me on Telegram, because I can go weeks without actually seeing that I got a message. I don't know how it works. Okay, now let me read you what Seth Keshel said. McAuliffe, or McAuliffe as we call him, was 800,000 votes short of the Biden total in Virginia, while Trump was nearly 300,000 over Youngkin. Sure, presidential races have higher turnout, but this one is 30% below last year's presidential race. This is interesting. I want to emphasize this. Think about this. McAuliffe got 800,000 fewer votes than the faker 46 allegedly got. Think about this. Mr. 81 million votes, who came down to Virginia to campaign for McAuliffe and who endorsed him, is supposedly the most loved candidate and president in the history of the world. That person, he came down and endorsed this guy and did a rally for him. And supposedly Brandon would help him close the deal. And yet, in spite of all that, and in spite of bringing Kamala and Hussein down here to campaign for him, they still lost. And the turnout among the Democrats was 800,000 fewer. That's an astonishing number, guys. That's almost 1 million. And so think about this. And this was a pivotal race. This is a governor's race. And I get that, off-year elections don't necessarily turn out as many voters, but that's massive. That's incredibly massive. And I want to tell you another number too here, and stick with me on this because this information is important. And so don't tune out on these numbers and these statistics. Part of the reason that we're in the situation that we're in is because people have always tuned this out and said, oh, this doesn't apply to me. It absolutely applies. Everything that happened in Virginia yesterday applies to you. because this is a watershed moment in the history of our country, that we took what was considered a solid blue state that supposedly Mr. 81 million votes won, and we flipped it in a resounding fashion. I mean, we spanked their butts. It wasn't just a a random outlier that won a seat. We took everything. This is really important. So, and I want to tell you something. Do you remember the other day when I was talking about Loudoun County and the story of what happened there with the girl who was raped in the bathroom in the high school, and the school board covered it up. You remember that story? And then they made the father who came to defend his daughter at a school board meeting, they tried to turn him into a villain. And Hussein stood up in a rally and called it a trumped up, manufactured outrage. That whole story. So let me tell you what happened in Loudoun County. Loudoun County is a bedroom community of DC, and in 2020, supposedly the Democrats had a 15-point advantage there. Their advantage went down by 4.7 points. So the Republicans surged in Loudoun County by almost 5 points. That's significant. That's really significant in a Democrat stronghold right outside of DC. So I wanted to point that out. And it's not just Loudoun County. There were a number of counties that had a Republican surge. And here's another one that is shocking. Virginia Beach City had a remarkable turnout. They had an increase of 3.6 points of Republicans. So it's a big deal. And if you look, I'm looking at a website called 538.com. They do an analysis of, the before and after of all that happened in this election. Now, the interesting thing about it is that Youngkin actually outperformed Trump in a lot of these places. It's hard to know whether that's because he has some rhino tendencies and he appeals more to like the middle of the road voters in Virginia, which I think is part of the reason that they chose him as the candidate. Because there's still a lot of rhinos here. There's a lot of traditional normie Republicans who like Trump, but wouldn't necessarily put a Trump sticker on their car or a Trump flag in their yard, whereas they felt like Youngkin was safe. And so it's also hard to know if Youngkin really did get more numbers in those areas or if there was voter fraud in those areas. And so Trump's numbers were suppressed. In any case, he got a lower turnout than Trump. But the point is he won. And last night it was very interesting because they were trying their usual shenanigans. I don't know if you remember, the media had tried to lay the groundwork by saying, the situation in Virginia is looking complicated. It doesn't look like that governor's race is going to be decided before Friday. And then the other thing that they were saying, of course, in Fairfax County, which is where they had the massive vote dump in 2020, they were saying last night that they had to rescan ballots, that was the place where they were trying to set up the steal. But what happened is that in Virginia Beach, the groundswell was happening so fast, and the reporting was coming in from these other precincts, and the numbers were climbing, and the percentage points were climbing to the extent that they actually mathematically could not justify putting in any more votes in Fairfax because he would have been the actual number of voters. They would have had to manufacture more voters than actually exist in Fairfax, because the other areas, some of the rural areas, Virginia Beach, other areas, had such a groundswell of voters. And this is important to understand. So if you're not paying attention right now, if you're distracted, I want you to stop what you're doing and pay attention, because this is important to understand. The President Trump came out last week and said, I want to make it clear that I am in no way advocating for people to stay home and abstain from voting. He came out and made that clear. Now, there are some people in the movement who are saying, I won't vote in a rigged election. I won't vote until 2020 is fixed. And especially, so that's a position that Lin Wood has taken. And so a lot of people, I think, have interpreted that to think that Lin Wood was a surrogate for Trump, and that he was saying that he was speaking for Trump. So Trump came out and corrected the record on that, and he said, you have to come out, and you have to vote. And the reason is that we've just seen this in Virginia, because there are only so many votes that they can count to match the number of voters, because they know that people are paying attention now because of all the canvassing that's been done. In a county with 75,000 registered voters, you can't turn in 80,000 votes. And so why is that important? It's important because in a rural county, for example, when you might have a 50% voter turnout. Well, if they get a 75% voter turnout in that county, and then another county, and then in multiple places, if they get a groundswell of voters turning out, that is going to tip the scales in such a way that if a county like Fairfax were to cheat, it would be obvious. It would be obvious that they padded the numbers. Do you get what I'm saying? And so we have to make it so that there's so many votes coming in that it's impossible for them to add to it. Because if people stay home, then it's going to have the opposite effect. The voting numbers are going to go down, and the Democrats can just slot in whatever votes they want, and nobody's going to know the difference. So you're like, oh, it was a low Republican turnout. Great, the D's came up by 5 points in this district, and nobody's going to know whether it was cheating or just low Republican turnout. So it's really critically and vitally important that people do vote, because at some point, despite their algorithms, the sheer masses, it reaches the voting numbers reach critical mass, and the computer, the math just can't keep up, is what I'm trying to say. At some point, the sheer mass of voters breaks their mathematical equation, and they can't fool you with the numbers anymore. So that's important to understand. And this is why President Trump is saying vote, vote, vote. And I'll admit that I was one of those people that was feeling incredibly demoralized and incredibly demoralized, and thinking, what's the point? And then I just started to think about it. I started to research it a little bit, and I looked at some different opinions on it, and I realized that the numbers and the sheer mass of voters coming out is vitally important. And so as we go into 2022, I want you to remember that. If we have any special elections, remember that this is not a scenario in which you want to stay home. That's not the way that you protest. I'll tell you the way you protest, and this is what General Flynn has been talking about. The way that you protest is to take local action. And in all of the stories that are coming out about the elections right now, the buried lead is the local races, the local wins all around the country. The media knows, they know that it's not just the big races that are pivotal right now. The watershed effect is happening, and it's obvious, and these people are paying attention. They're just not talking about it. The obvious watershed effect that's taking place right now is the smaller races. The fact that, let me look at my notes here. The fact that that in Seattle, the city attorney in Seattle for Seattle flipped from blue to red. The Pennsylvania elected a Republican to the Supreme Court. That's a big deal. There's a Texas House seat that flipped from blue to red. I think it had been blue for quite a long time. A special election in Ohio went red. Rochester, New Hampshire mayor flipped from blue to red. The media is not going to tell you that. That's scary because it had been blue since 2005. So 16 years of communist rule flipped to red. And then New Jersey, this is a crazy one. New Jersey Senate Legislative District 3, the guy who ran beat the president of the Senate in New Jersey. This was like the media is melting down about this one because this was like a nobody. He didn't have a website. He didn't spend like $1 million on a campaign, and he won. He beat the president of the Senate in New Jersey, and so this is a big deal, guys. This is a big deal. So I think that you need to understand this. I don't even have all of the list of the houses, the city councils, board of supervisors, school board, mayors, things like this. A lot of these things were flipped from blue to red. This is really important for people to understand. I was looking at one chat. Where they said that that the entire school board in their area is now Republican, that they got another Republican on the school board, and so now it's 100% Republican. So it's things like that those things are a huge part of the victory that we're celebrating, and it's really significant that this is happening. And so I want people to understand that. I want people to understand. I want you to consider this. Celebrate the victory, but consider this a call to action for the future from now on, because this is just the beginning. And I want to take a break here before I go to the next section. If you're just coming into the show, please like it. If you're on Facebook, tag your friends, share this into groups. Same thing on YouTube. Please share this. Let people know we're live. And also, I'm Mary Grace. This is Real Talk with Mary Grace. I will be back tomorrow at the same time at 1:00 Eastern. And hey, Mary Wingard, good to see you. Okay, I want to share the show. I want to put my show into Telegram. Can somebody put the show in Telegram in my chat? That would be awesome. Okay, so here we go. I got the link. Yeah, they're squishing my numbers really bad. So any sharing you could do would be awesome. Okay. Now, so my point is, I just want to see. So something just came up on my phone here. Okay. Now, it actually has to do with something that I was going to talk about. Now, okay, so thank you for sharing this out. Please, the other thing is, if you come back into the show later, if you come back, please leave a comment, especially on YouTube. It helps move it up. It helps people see it in your feed. I think also in Facebook, it does that. So if you come back and leave a comment, it shows up in other people's feeds. So please go ahead and do that. Now, I wanted to talk about, I want to shift to talking about the Trump effect of the elections. This is something that I've noticed. It's very interesting. There's something going on right now among the GOP, and I want you to pay attention to the people who are pushing this narrative, because keep in mind that a lot of people who made a name for themselves and who gained fame and notoriety and even money over the last 4 years, you know, talking about Trump, commenting on Trump, following his campaign, all of that. A lot of those people were not originally on the side of Trump. Keep that in mind. A lot of them were Cruz fans. A lot of them were Bush fans. A lot of them were Carly Fiorina, whoever. You know what I'm saying? They weren't for Trump, and yet, being the opportunist that they are, they actually came out. They actually, jumped on the bandwagon. And now it's kind of interesting. We're seeing something interesting with this election. And I'll give you an example. We've got somebody that we thought was somebody that we would assume is like all in for Trump, is throwing shade. Okay, so here's a statement that President Trump put out. It's actually not a statement that he made. It's a statement that was made by John Fredericks. It says, if there were no Trump in this election, there would be no Glenn Youngkin. And this is on the John Fredericks show. So the president puts it out in quotes as a statement, right? And so then on Twitter, Julie Kelly, a journalist, says, how about congratulations and not making everything about you? Well, Julie, President Trump did congratulate Glenn Youngkin. He endorsed Glenn Youngkin. He campaigned for him. And then Raheem Kassam responds by saying, agreed, why does he do this? And I want you to pay attention to this, because I've noticed in the past 48 hours that there's been a shift, that there is a cadre of individuals who are trying to shift your loyalty and your focus and onto people like Glenn Youngkin. They're trying to shift you to the safer, more rhino-ish category of candidate. And it is a sneaky, sort of insidious, sideways attempt to cast President Trump aside with no acknowledgement of everything that he did to get us here. And I want to be clear about this. This is not about hero worship. This is not about having blinders on. But I want to remind these people that we truly would not have a Glenn Youngkin or a Winsome Sears or a Jason Miyares or a school board person or a flip in the Virginia House of Delegates without Trump. Without President Trump, we would be a completely communist country by now. I want to make that clear. You think things are bad now. If Trump had not won in 2016 and come out guns blazing, balls to the wall the way he did, and taught us to recognize the fake news and taught us to recognize the corruption, if not for him, this country would be utterly and completely and totally lost, because the 16-year plan to destroy America that included 8 years of Hildebeest would have been implemented. The Great Reset would have already been done and dusted, and half of us would be in camps. I want to make that incredibly clear. I want to shout it from the rooftops to anyone who is now throwing shade on President Trump and saying that he should not be making it about himself. I think you're dead wrong. You're dead wrong, because we have him to thank for being where we are. And I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to tell you that without the steal of 2020, we would have no Glenn Youngkin or Winsome Sears or Jason Miyares or city attorney in Seattle, school board members. We wouldn't have any of that. And I'll tell you why. Because and this goes back to my original theory, where I truly believe that white hats allowed the steal in 2020. I'm not saying it's not going to be fixed, but they had to allow it. It had to play out all the way to the fake inauguration so that the American people would be sufficiently awake and angry and motivated. Without Trump, on many, many levels, we would never be in this place. And think about this. If we had intervened during the steal last November, if our guys had intervened and stopped the steal as it was happening, which I think that our probably Space Force was watching the whole thing and recording everything in real time. If we had intervened and stopped that, and Trump had the 80 million vote victory, that we knew was rightfully his, think about what your attitude would be if that had happened. We were all poised to celebrate and get on with our lives and have an end to the pandemic and just go back to normal. Well, the sad part about that is that for a lot of us, a lot of people, normal was going back into captivity and slavery. And the problem is that if Trump had walked away with that victory the way that we knew he should have, if they hadn't done what they did to expose the outright theft and fraud and lawlessness, everybody would have just gone back into their laissez-faire, let the government take care of everything, thank God we won that one attitude. Nobody would have showed up to stop the steal. Nobody would have been at their town council meetings. Nobody would have been fighting to turn around election fraud. Nobody would have been doing that because it would not have been revealed. And so think about this. When Trump did his speech on January 6th, he said, sometimes it takes more courage to do nothing than to do something. And I believe that one of the things he was talking about in that moment was that it took a lot of courage and a lot of character for him to walk away. Now, he never conceded, but he walked away and let them put Brandon in the fake inauguration. Think about that. I mean, if he hadn't done that, we would just be cruising along and going, thank God we turned that around. We got him. We kept him for another 4 years. But here's the thing. What happens after 4 more years of Trump? What then? What's going to happen then? You know, if it's not fixed now, if the bright light of truth is not shined on that cancerous tumor of passivity and lawlessness and criminality and outright Marxist ideology that has crept into every aspect of our society, if not then, if not now, never. This is what people need to understand. And so anybody that's throwing shade on Trump right now, I just, and if you're one of those people that is starting to have second thoughts and go, yeah, maybe Raheem is right. Maybe President Trump shouldn't make this about himself. First of all, he's not making it just about himself. Does he have a big ego? Absolutely, he does. However, he has every right to claim victory here because it's because of him that we have been able to see the shining light on all of the cancer, of all of the evil, of all the wickedness, all the lawlessness. Think about it. People didn't even understand how bad the fake news media was before he started calling them out. Think about that. Think about it. Think about it. People didn't have any idea about human trafficking on the border before Trump started talking about it. People thought that we were going to be energy dependent for the rest of our natural lives. We had energy independence a year ago. You guys know that, right? Until they put a stop to it. What's the first thing Brandon did on his first day in office? He stopped the Keystone Pipeline. He cut off our energy independence. And so because he did that, we now know that we now know that there are forces controlling this, that there are puppets pulling the strings. People didn't know that before. They weren't aware. They thought it was just, oh gosh, luck of the draw, dang, that's really bad. We're not going to get our pipeline. We have to buy and beg for oil from OPEC. That's just the system that everybody thought that we belonged to. All right. So this is important for people to understand. And when the other thing is that, he raised people's awareness and he raised people's courage. He raised people's courage to a level that people decided, hey, I've got to get out and do something. This country would have been completely and utterly and totally asleep without President Trump in office. And the thing is, he's coming back. And so those of you who are throwing shade on him now, I'm just going to say, if I see you out there cheerleading for him and making and riding on his coattails and jumping on the bandwagon of Trump and being an opportunist and making a name for yourself and even financially benefiting after the way you're acting right now, all I can say is that you're a mercenary. Shame on you. You should never show your face in public again because you're showing yourself to be just like the Democrats, no better than them. So I'm just encouraging people, rethink the way that you're framing President Trump right now, because our country would be in dire, dire straits without him and without his courage and without his tenacity and bravery. That man took slings and arrows, many of which we don't even know about. The things that we know happened to him, the legal persecution that they put his family through, all of the fake investigations, the libel, the slander, the outright lies, the threats to his life over and over, the sleepless nights. Think about that. Think about what that man has gone through to save this country. And it's not done. He has not stopped working a single day since he went to Mar-a-Lago on the 20th of January this year. He has not stopped working. He's been working tirelessly for this country. And so for those of you who are abandoning and jumping off the Trump bandwagon after you've benefited from it and made a name for yourselves, shame on you. Shame on you. I'm calling you out. And that brings me to my next topic, which is captivity. One of the things that this presidency and the last year and the pandemic has exposed to us is the degree to which the people of this country and indeed this world have been held captive. And and the scripture that I've been thinking about a lot the past few days as we've been leading up to this election, I've really been praying about this election. I said, God, the people need a win. The scripture says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And I really believe that so many people have been on that brink of just being completely demoralized and sickened and just ready to leave the fight. Okay. And so I was really praying and standing and believing for a win. And so that's what we had. And so this scripture was going through my mind the past few days, and I want to read it to you. It's Psalm 126. When the Lord brought back the captive ones of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with joyful shouting. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad. Restore our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Those who sow in tears shall reap with joyful shouting. He who goes to and fro weeping, carrying his bag of seed, shall indeed come again with a shout of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. This is such a beautiful scripture because this is a song of thanksgiving that was written about. This is about the Israelites being brought out of the Babylonian captivity. And if you don't know the story of that, that is when the Israelites were taken captives by the Babylonians and they were brought into captivity for a period of 70 years. The book of Daniel covers most of that period. Daniel was one of the Israelites who was taken captive. He was part of the nobility, and he was taken captive along with some of his friends. And they were brought into the royal palace of the Babylonians, and the Babylonians had intended to teach them and basically disciple them in the ways of Babylon. And Daniel made a decision that he would not go along with what they were trying to teach him. Now, I want to talk about this captivity because I think that there are a lot of parallels with our country and the way that we got in the situation that we were in. There are parallels to what was going on at the time of the Israelites being brought into captivity. Now, the very first thing that people need to understand about how they were brought into captivity is if you go back to the time of King Hezekiah, that is a very interesting story because King Hezekiah got sick. And he was an Israeli king, and he got sick, and the Assyrians, who were from the ruling powers of Babylon at the time, they actually came to see him, or they sent him gifts, and then they came to see him. And he was so grateful that they came that he actually opened the storehouse of all of the treasures of Israel, and he showed them the treasures. He showed them all of the most intimate treasures that were really exclusively for the Israelites. He just opened the gates and showed them. Don't ever do that. That's like a really bad strategy when somebody from a neighboring country comes and you open up the storehouse of the treasure and you show it to them. Well, one of the reasons that that was one of the things that led to the captivity and the downfall of the Israelites by the Babylonians. And I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but just remember that he showed them the treasure. He gave them access to their most sacred and holy places of Israel. Now, I want to bring that into modern times, and I want to explain to you something that's happened in this country that has gotten us into the place that we're in, so that you can understand the parallels and you can understand the significance of what's been happening over the past 24 hours with these elections. In one of the things that you have noticed over the past 20 years, but more recently, like the past 10 years with this generation of millennials, is that our universities have been completely compromised and taken over by the by Marxist ideology. And, the woke mob has completely taken over our universities. And it's very interesting when you look at the voting patterns in cities where most of these universities are, they're predominantly Democrat voters. Think about that. And so, what does that have to do with the captivity? It has a lot to do with it because it was because of Henry Kissinger. It was because of Henry Kissinger that our country began to normalize relations with China after the end of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Henry Kissinger had this idea that if we just made friends with China and influence them with our Western ways, that they would adopt our Western ways. Now, anybody that understands the mindset of the Chinese knows that they think in terms of millennia. And so when the Americans started to adopt that type of relationship with the Chinese, with China, and I'm talking about the Chinese government, I'm talking about diplomatic relationships, not the Chinese people, okay? When our country started to use that strategy and adopt that strategy, thinking that we would have the influence on them, it actually opened a Pandora's box. Go back to what I said about Hezekiah opening the treasure. One of the things that happened as a result of that attempt to normalize relations with China and westernize them by our influence is that somehow we allowed them to infiltrate our universities. How did we do that? We did it with something called the Confucius Institutes. So some very bright, forward-thinking individuals in the Chinese government came to our diplomats and said, hey, we've got this great idea, since we're friends with you guys now. We would like to bring our Confucius Institutes into your universities and teach your students, your young, impressionable 20-year-olds about Chinese culture, so that we can, be friends for life, and you guys can understand our culture. Guys, that was a backdoor to communism infiltrating our universities. You understand that, right? And so what they did was the people that enacted these policies. The people that enacted these policies did the same thing that Hezekiah did. They opened the door and gave them access to our greatest treasure, our youth, the generations to come. They allowed them full, complete, unfettered access to our universities in such a way that it completely compromised a whole generation of kids, not to mention the professors. Now, there are other ways that the universities were infiltrated. I understand that. This is part of the puzzle, part of the story of how that happened, but it's a big part. It's a very big part of what happened, and people need to understand this. And so here's where I want to give you a call to action, and I want to exhort you to understand that the victory that we are experiencing today, it's a sweet and beautiful victory. However, it is a beginning, because everybody needs to understand the gravity and the seriousness of the situation that we are in as a nation. And so for that, I want to bring you back to this psalm, which is that the Israelites were weeping with joy when they were brought out of captivity back into Israel. However, what you have to understand is that the book of Daniel brings us into the time of Israel when the captives had been brought back, but they were in distress because their nation, their city had literally been destroyed and it was in shambles, and they needed help rebuilding it. And so what I present to you is that, yes, we are in a time of victory. And just like when Trump was elected, we felt the elation of victory. However, I want to present to you that the fight is just begun, because the walls have to be rebuilt. And the individuals and the institutions that have infiltrated and have been a part of tearing down those walls of the foundation of this nation, which is the Constitution, those individuals, those institutions must be eradicated. Because, and so what I mean is there's work to be done. And when Nehemiah, if you look at the book of Nehemiah, when I think I said Daniel, I meant Nehemiah earlier. So when Nehemiah came back to Babylon, when he came back to Israel from Babylon to rebuild, he was coming after the Israelites had returned. But they got there, and there was so much to do. And I want to read this. I want to read this scripture again from verse 5 of Psalm 126. It says, "Those who sow in tears shall reap with joyful shouting. He who goes to and fro weeping, carrying his bag of seed, shall indeed come again with a shout of joy, bringing his sheaves with him." And so I want to talk to you about the seed, because this is where we are right now. The call to action is right here in this verse. He who goes to and fro weeping, carrying his bag of seed, shall indeed come again with a shout of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. That's the harvest. And so this is a critical time in our nation. And the reason for that is because those of you who understand that we've achieved a victory, yes, we are weeping with joy. We are shouting with joy. We're so happy. But we also have to understand that it's the seeds that the ground now is ready. And we are the ones who are being called to plant those seeds that are going to eradicate and replace the institutions that have managed to take over our country. Are you guys tracking with me on this? This is the critical part of this victory, is that the psalmist understood, yes, we have a victory, and yes, now we're planting seeds so that we can enjoy the harvest of the work that we're doing now. And so that victory was a beginning. That victory, that escape from captivity, which we're starting to experience, was a beginning. Okay? This is so important. And so we can never, ever go back to that time when we were not planting seeds, when we were not preparing for a harvest. We can't do that. We have to stay out of captivity. Okay? That's the critical message for today. Because the truth is, politicians are going to come and go, especially at the national level. And we as Americans have done a whole lot to turn them into rock stars and cult figures and put so much of our trust in them. But if we've learned anything from this election, it's that the local elections, that getting into the schools, getting into the school boards, getting into these universities and reversing what's done, changing the culture from within. Those are the seeds we plant. Because it was Andrew Breitbart who said that politics is downstream from culture. And so we have to understand that taking back our culture, planting those seeds of truth, and walking in a kingdom walk that shows people the truth of who God is and the truth of the foundations of our nation and what it was based on and founded on. Being a walking, talking demonstration of that is what's needed right now. And it's done by action. The seeds don't plant themselves. And the psalmist knew that. And so even with tears in their eyes, going back and forth, they're still planting the seeds. So I present to you, yes, there is plenty still to grieve about. And the Lord knows that, and he sees your tears. He sees your tears of joy. He sees your tears of distress. But the point here, the important point, is that you never stop planting. You never stop walking as an influencer for the kingdom into those places. And so many people did. and it's time to get back out there. That's the word of the Lord for today, for you. Okay, just looking at your comments here. Looks like everything just came to a halt in the comments. Okay, let's see. Yep. So that's what I had for you today, and I hope that it's encouraging. I hope that it is exhorting you to take the steps and to really pray into what is the next step. What is it that you're doing? How are you involved? Because, like I said, this is a watershed moment in our nation. Because yes, it's another step toward removal from the captivity, but it's a beginning. It's a beginning. That's the critical thing to understand. Okay. All right. Any comments or questions? I've got a few minutes. Those of you who watch Elijah streams, I know he's going to come on. He's probably on now. He's probably doing his introduction. So it's Wednesdays with Kat and Steve. I don't want people to miss that if that's something you'd like to watch. I do recommend it. I like that channel. It's on YouTube, Elijah Streams. And they also have a Rumble channel. Somebody's saying Fox refuses to call the Virginia race. Well, McAuliffe conceded, so Fox can go pound sand for all I care. Even CNN called the governor race. So, we know that Fox is totally compromised. Does anybody have the final word on the New Jersey governor's race? Oh gosh, I hope this is true. I'm just looking at something on Twitter. This is hilarious, guys. Do you remember the other day I told you about the racist hoax that the Lincoln Project did with the McAuliffe campaign? This is funny. I don't know if it's true, but it's on Twitter. Somebody's saying this. Breaking: Virginia Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin sends a fruit basket with a thank you card to the Lincoln Project. It's the least we can do. After all, they were instrumental in helping us defeat Terry McAuliffe, said a Youngkin aide. Again, I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty funny because the Lincoln Project are just a bunch of perverts that should be run out of town and tarred and feathered, in my opinion. But anyway, so I just think that's very funny. And anyway, so somebody's saying New Jersey race too close to call. There was definitely some monkey business going on in the New Jersey race. I think that I saw that one county had 100% of the votes reported, and then a few minutes later, it was like 97%. Delia said, yeah, okay, yeah. So Bergen County, there was a midnight drop of 40,000 votes in New Jersey's Bergen County after 100% of precincts were reporting with Republican in the lead. Yeah, that doesn't work. You can't use Common Core math in elections, but apparently the Democrats think you can. And so they just keep doing it over and over. I want to check the Trump stock. I'm going to check the Trump stock and see how it's looking today. Wow, GameStop is up to $215, guys. Who has GameStop? I do. Let's see. DWAC, $64. So if I were going to buy more of the Trump stock, Digital World Acquisition Corporation, I would buy it on the dip. $64 a share right now. Yeah, Digital World Acquisition Corporation. Right there. Yeah, so that's for his media company. The Truth Social. That's the parent company. Okay. Let's see. Any more questions? Let me just look through your comments here and then I'll go. I'm going to be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern with another live show. And so here's something I want to tell you. I'll answer that question in a minute. So I'm going to start doing interviews on my show. I'm going to most likely pre-record and then upload. If there's somebody that you want me to interview within reason, that would be a good match for my show. You can email me info@marygracemedia.com. Just suggestions. I just know that if you know somebody that you want me to interview, I need to put this disclaimer out there. If you make a suggestion and it doesn't happen, do not take it personally. There could be a multitude of reasons that I don't interview somebody or that I don't bring them on the show. I want you to know that I reserve the 100% sole discretion on that. And so if you're sensitive and you want to suggest somebody and then it's going to hurt you if I don't take your suggestion, then don't make the suggestion. I just want you to know that. Don't put me in that awkward position of having to of having to justify if I decide not to use your suggestion. Do you got what I say? Like, don't make it awkward. Don't be passive aggressive. But if you have a suggestion and you think that that it would be good, I'll take a look at it. Okay. info@marygracemedia.com. The other thing is, don't forget to write to me about superfoods, green organic superfoods, personally grown and processed right here in the U.S. A great source of nutrition. I've talked about it on other shows. If you want more information, if you want a voucher to save over $100 off of a 30-day supply, write to me, info@marygracemedia.com. Diane has a question. Do we have to know them personally to request or recommend them? No, you don't have to know them personally at all. I'm just giving you a disclaimer. If it's somebody, like if you just say, hey, Mary Grace, I want you to interview Alan West. Okay. I would love to see an interview with Alan West. That's what I'm saying. I just want your ideas. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Or if you know somebody that you suggest I interview, it may or may not happen. So I want to make it clear now that if you make a suggestion and I don't like it, or I decide not to do it, or I can't make it happen, don't set yourself up to get hurt if I don't do it, if it doesn't happen. That's all I'm saying. It's just a suggestion. Is that clear? Okay. So somebody said we have a prayer request here, and I want to make sure that we do this. The first question, though, was from Olympia. Can we buy without a broker? Just, I have an account with Fidelity, and the answer is yes. So you just transfer money from your bank account into there. They say it takes like 2 days to clear. Typically with Fidelity, they'll actually let you make a trade as long as the transfer has been initiated. Okay. So, Lisa in Alaska, she says, I would appreciate prayers for my son, Gary Dean. He was life flighted from our small Alaskan town to the government hospital in the city of Anchorage. Okay. Double pneumonia, blood clots. So guys, we really need to declare and decree healing over him right now in the name of Jesus. I just command the heavenly host to be in his room, to put a wall of protection around him. We command supernatural healing over his body. Please put him on your prayer list, you guys. Gary Dean, and he's in Anchorage, Alaska, in the hospital. So please pray for him and lift him up and lift up his family. This is Lisa's son. Okay. Trump stock, DWAC, Digital World Acquisition Corporation. All right. I'm going to go. You guys go enjoy Elijah streams or whatever else that you're going to do today. If you come in and watch my replay, please remember to leave a comment so that other people will see the show. It'll pop up in their feed if they follow you after you leave a comment. That's why I want you to leave the comments, not just so that I do go and read the comments. I do, as much as I am able to see them. So please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and What else? Subscribe. Oh, like the show. And then on Facebook, remember, follow the channel, like the channel, and then also like the show and leave a comment, tag a friend, share it in a group. I will see everybody tomorrow. Thank you so much for your participation and for your comments and questions. I do appreciate it. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Have a great day.